It is June 27, 2025, 11:07 p.m. Yeah, okay. Hopefully this doesn't get dragged too long. I want to talk about today about this continuation of this theme, of actualization, pseudo-actualization, puriturness, um, all of it. So I think an interesting point. So puriturness, something I learned from Dr. K. And he talked about it a bit more. And one thing is that it's about sort of, to not think about it, just doing it, It's not about trying to find an idealized version of process. It's about just doing. And in a sense, what I'm doing right now, talking about it, is also sort of counterproductive to this process of actualization, which a puriturnist needs. But I would like to say that I am pushing, although I've had moments where it's not, where I felt like I don't want to do this, but I pushed through. I think, at least in terms of making this film project, I had moments where, like, I don't want to really record today, but then I think about, no, but I should record today, even though I don't want to, and then I record. But all the recording so far has been kind of shit, and I only have 2 months left, so hopefully I'll do more recording tomorrow. It's just, I'm using a GoPro. I feel like the perspective from the head looks better, but there's way too many issues with the head, so I try the chest. But the one time I tried the chest, which was this Wednesday, I didn't have enough battery, so I gotta make sure it's charged. Tomorrow we'll see how it goes. And then what's another thing? And so that's my actualization action towards puriturness. But I think about, like, is puriturness something that was created, or I guess more strengthened, through, I don't know, some sort of external factors like social media, internet, because there is this narrative that there's a lot of puriturness nowadays. And I guess social media or internet might have some influence on it. But then, me personally, I look back, and one thing, I do have this pattern of not completing. Even in video games, even in books. I have it in books. When I was really small, I rarely finish a book. I feel like this was before I really had access to the internet, social media, I think. So maybe it's something that was just more inherent to me. But the point is, it shouldn't really matter if I'm trying to overcome and be in a position of actualization. But anyways, Well, of course, what's interesting is this sort of like the ought, how I should live, is very contradicting to the philosophy that I'm really interested in recently, which is Deleuze and Guattari. Guattari. Deleuze and Guattari. DNG, I'll just say DNG. Because it's all about how one might live, right? There should not be an ought. But then, what the thing that appeals to me with that philosophy is that it kind of excuses myself. And it's not wrong either. That's why it's really appealing. But at the same time, when, you know, time is scarce and there's only so much you can do, and me personally, I have this motivation to make something out of life. How one might live is really becomes a form of escapism, or at least maybe the point of how one might live isn't necessarily, or at least that's probably not the intent of DNG, right? The intent of DNG is more to do with power, and that there is a billion ways to live, but a person should be able to come up with their own how one ought to live. And you can't stay in a place where how one might live, although that would contradict DNG's point, because I'm creating an ought by saying there should be an ought. So maybe it is really the point that is just how one might live. But anyways, okay. So anyways, yeah, I think it's appealing, but at the same time, I do need to find a sort of should, right? I think Kant said something about maturity is about finding your own morality, basically being able to critically think, although he is a structuralist, right? He has the categorical imperative, that somehow we would think for ourselves, but we would reach the same sort of sets of morality. I think that's where I would disagree, but the part where maturity is about finding your own morality is very important, basically thinking for yourself. And I guess I do that a lot, but then I really need to go from thinking to actually doing, the actualization. And anyways, so yeah, that's just, I guess, a brief point about me, my personal actualization, that I'm still working on it, little by little. Yeah. And then the next point is pseudo-actualization. So what I talked about before, I wanted to actually bring up a quote. Oh well, it's fine. I kind of remember. I don't remember the direct quote, but I remember the message. So I think it was an anti-Oedipus. DNG talks about desire, and desire is part of this process of going from virtual to actual, right? And and it's not the point isn't desire is not some sort of lack, but rather just it's just there. It's like a natural thing. It's just part of the process that virtual to actual is inevitable, and that process is just described as desire, or at least the fire that moves the process is desire. Although it's so hard for me to see it through that. I feel like desire is still founded on a lack. It's a drive for me because I talked about this telos of life, about instead of just talking about virtual versus actual, I was talking about ideal versus reality. And to me, desire is ideal minus reality, and then seeing the difference and trying to make the difference smaller. That's how I see desire. But sorry, that was not my point. My point is to do with the quote about something about how desire is not kind of anarchical, anti-authority, because of the idea that there will be suppressive forces that hinder actualization despite the presence of desire. And so, well, it's not always, but there will be cases like that, and therefore desire in that case is powerful because it challenges the norms or challenges power. And I was interested in this idea of like suppression, hindrance, because now with pseudo actualization, it's not hindrance anymore. It's about tricking, because through the internet, through films, TV shows, social media, through vicariousness, you do actually get to attain actualization, except that it's not really your actualization, it's someone else's, or it's not even real, right? Most of it's not real. It's a fabricated actualization. So it's not really power blocking, it's power tricking. It's a temptress, sort of. And I thought that's interesting, the implication of power, the politics of pseudo-actualization, I would say. The modern political implication. And I guess I don't have that much to say, but it really feels like how power evolves, or at least capitalism is a very intelligent